the tape. Amazing.
That's a wrap for this hour of MSNBC Live. I'm Alex Witt. 2 hours until I see you again at noon Eastern, but I know where you're going to be for the next 2 hours. You're going to stay put and watch AM Joy with my friend Joy Reid.
Welcome back to the studio. Nice to have you.
So I want to thank you all. It's very early in the morning. I think you probably broke the all-time in history television rating for 3 o'clock in the morning, that I would say.
We've had 17 released, and we're very proud of that record. Very proud. And we have others coming. We're in the midst of some very big negotiations to get others out.
Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. Well, it's a well-known secret that reality television, like pro wrestling, isn't really real. The drama and the conflicts that make the audience go wild are largely scripted. The same could be said about the reality TV presidency, this polarizing cocktail of government and shock jock entertainment, where buzzwords and branding go a lot farther than actual facts. Donald Trump knows this. And his ability, or rather his compulsion to lie, even about things that are easy to prove, has in a crazy way actually helped him, allowing him to play the victim for his fans and distract the rest of us from his multiple controversies and policy failures. Which is why now, as we pass the 1-year mark on Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe, we're seeing Trump peddle yet another fake scandal to distract from the real potential crisis dogging his presidency. The mounting evidence that the Trump campaign cooperated with Russia's attack on our democracy and that the President of the United States obstructed justice in an attempt to cover it up. That, very simply, is Russiagate. The fake scandal that Trump scripted for us in the media this week has a name, one we're not going to repeat this morning, and it has tweets to go with it, which I am not going to read, because reading those tweets is what he wants us to do. But the focus of this latest reality show episode is a revival of the lie that the FBI under President Obama spied on Trump's campaign in 2016. It's the latest effort in Trump's ongoing crusade to discredit the Mueller investigation and to make you doubt it. A crusade that's fueling the Trump train and forcing the rest of us to ponder. Is Russiagate at this point so riddled with Trump lies and chaos and confusion that he could actually avoid taking the fall? Joining me now is Congresswoman Maxine Waters of California, one of the most vocal Russiagate critics on the Hill. And Congresswoman, thank you for being here. Good morning.
Good morning, and I'm delighted to be with you again.
Thank you. You know, I'm glad to talk to you this morning because I feel like, you know, you're one of the few Democrats who seems to understand that you have to have a strong public, kind of almost branded counterweight to Donald Trump, because he is running this show. It's sort of like a reality show in which he floods the zone with constant new episodes, new controversies, new made-up scandals that completely take us off the plot. Are you concerned that your party is so determined not to center Donald Trump that they are avoiding the fact that he is the center right now?
You know, I'm very concerned that given all that we have learned about this president, given all of the connections of his allies and the people around him to Russia, whether it's to Putin or the Kremlin or the oligarchs, given the fact that our special counsel has indicted Manafort, given the fact that we know that Flynn was invited to come to Russia and he was there, he sat with Putin, he even earned money on a speaking engagement, and on and on and on, that there's not an understanding about the danger of this president and the way that he has lied and the way that he has tried to divert attention, the way that he has tried to undo the investigation and say that it is not lawful, it is not legal, that Mueller should not be doing what he's doing. I mean, the information that we know and the evidence that we see about him trying to undermine the investigation, the obstruction of justice that's unfolding right before our very eyes. And the Republicans are not standing up and parting from this man. And the Democrats feel that if and somehow we continue to talk about him or focus on him, that that's going to go against us rather than help us to, get him focused on by the American public in ways that they will understand the danger. So it is frustrating, but I think that I am absolutely correct in what I'm seeing, what I have learned. I believe he is dangerous, and I believe that unless we move collectively in a bipartisan way, that this man is going to be very destructive to our democracy.
You know, and to that very point, Congresswoman, I mean, we have seen multiple guilty pleas and indictments. I just want to put them up on the screen for the audience. Michael Flynn pleaded guilty. George Papadopoulos, who worked with the campaign, pleaded guilty. Rick Gates, Richard Pinedo, Alex von der Swan, and Paul Manafort. You go on and on and on. 13 Russian nationals. There have been multiple indictments. And yet, Congresswoman, the Global Strategy Group did a poll. And they asked people a lot of questions, but here are a couple. How much have you heard about the Mueller investigation? Look at that. Most people say they've heard a lot. The people who say they've heard a lot the most intensely are Republicans. They say they've heard a lot the most, right? But when you ask people, has the probe uncovered crimes? I just showed you the people who pleaded guilty. No. A majority of Americans say they do not know that there have been crimes uncovered. And look at Republicans. 85% say that to their knowledge, no crimes have been uncovered. And I'll show you one more thing. A word cloud that the same organization did, where they asked for your sort of stream of consciousness. What's the word that comes to mind? Look at that. Donald Trump's favorite buzzword, witch hunt. Are you concerned that the general public, particularly, you know, Republicans are just for Trump, so maybe we should discount that. But I even see independents in this poll, not even knowing that there have been crimes uncovered.
Yeah, I am concerned, but you know, the way it has unfolded, there's so much information that's coming out almost on a daily basis that the average American just can't keep up with it. You know, people go to work, they go about their lives, they may turn on television on the so-called news hour in the evening, or maybe catch a little bit in the morning, but they don't know all of the details, and they don't understand, you know, how many countries have been indicted. 3 countries involved in this already. They don't know how many people have been indicted. They don't know. They may know about Manafort, or they may know about Flynn, but they don't know about Papadopoulos. They don't know about Gates. They don't know about the others who are entangled in this mess. But they should know this. They should know that something is terribly wrong, that there's all of these connections that have been uncovered with Russia. They should know about now the 2 meetings that Trump Jr. has had with Russians, and they should know that there was an attempt to create a back channel to Putin and connect our president and Putin in some ways. They should know the basics, but they don't know the details. Yeah. But that's okay. We cannot give up. We cannot allow him to destruct this investigation in the way that he's doing. He lied about a spy being embedded in his campaign. There's been no spy embedded in his campaign. He's lying about witch hunt, but you notice it, he says witch hunt over and over again. He has learned some of the Russia tactics about how you deal with getting people to believe you. You say it over and over again. And he has discredited the media by saying it over and over again. There's no witch hunt, there's no spy, but he thinks that, you know, this lesson that he's learned, and I think it is from the Russian tactics that he's learned this over the years, that if he says it enough, he can get people to believe it.
Yeah, it's a frightening concept, you know, as a citizen, to think that so many fellow citizens either don't know or don't care about foreign involvement in our election system. But you have been consistent in it, Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend.
And thank you very much. You just keep on going. I love what you're doing. I love the way you handle the news, and I'm so appreciative for the information that you share with this country and with the world.
Congresswoman Waters, thank you so much.
You're
welcome.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, thank you. And joining us now, our panel, Natasha Bertrand of The Atlantic, Republican strategist for Mercury Public Affairs, Caden Dawson, Democratic pollster, Fernanda Mondi, and Maria Teresa Kumar of Voto Latino. Thank you all very much. Natasha, I'm going to come to you first, because just as an example of it, I mean, what Trump does, I mean, he's clever at one thing, which is branding. He labels people things. He says little Marco, suddenly people think little Marco when they see Marco Rubio. He says low energy Jeb, people think low energy Jeb. He's good at branding and giving things nicknames. But he also is so brazen about saying things that are not only a lie, but that are just an easily disprovable lie. There's sound or something to back it up. I want to show one example here. This is element 2 from our producers. This is a Trump tweet on Thursday morning in which he claims that the former director of national intelligence, Jim Clapper, has admitted that there was spying in his campaign. He claims that it's admitted, that money's paid. He puts all these details in it. He puts his tagline in there, which he wants the media to say. His hashtag that he wants everyone to repeat that ends up in all these headlines. Now let us actually play James Clapper, former DNI under President Obama, and what he actually said.
Was the FBI spying on Trump's campaign?
No, they were not. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing, trying to understand were the Russians infiltrating, trying to gain access, trying to gain leverage and influence.
So why doesn't he like
what they do?
Did the intelligence community spy on President Trump and his campaign?
No, we did not, and that is a distortion of what I said.
You know, as a journalist, you've been covering this Russiagate phenomenon, as long as we've been covering it. Complexity is not your friend in this, right? For the average person. So how, from a journalistic point of view, do you get your arms around something that Donald Trump can pick out one fact, which is that the FBI was trying to find out if the Russians were infiltrating his campaign. He turns that into spying, and he obscures, even though there are easily provable facts that disprove it.
Right, and the question that seems to be on everyone's mind now is when do you call it a lie versus a demonstrable falsehood, for example? Right. And this is something where we're all wondering, is this something that's pathological, where he just does not understand the difference between a lie and the truth at this point because everything to him is just spin? Or is it deliberate? And based on what Leslie Stahl said last week about his attacks on the media, where he said, I do it for a specific purpose. I have a strategy here. Essentially, I discredit you because I want it to, whenever you write something negative about me, I don't want anyone to believe you. That really was a window into his mindset here. And it makes you wonder, is it worse that he might not understand the difference between truth and a lie, or is it worse that he's actually, this is all very deliberate? And of course, this is part of a larger pattern. Ever since last year, he has been trying thing after thing to discredit the Russia investigation. First, it was the unmasking scandal with the help of Devin Nunes. Right. Then it was, it was wiretapping. Then it was the FISA warrant on Carter Page. And now it's this idea that there was a spy embedded in his campaign, which of course is just not true. The informants are used by the FBI all the time. There are actually specific guidelines that are encouraging of the FBI to use human sources because they're just more effective. And I think that he is deliberately trying to obfuscate from the fact that the FBI was so concerned about the Trump campaign's willingness to kind of solicit international help for his campaign, not even just from Russia, but from the United Arab Emirates, from Saudi Arabia, that they went as far as to send someone to actually communicate with members of his campaign to see if there was something awry there. So.
And Fernand, I'm glad to have you here today, my friend, because you have a few different skill sets that are appropriate here. You're a pollster, a very good one, but you've also done talk radio. So you have been on the receiving end of the recipients of this kind of information. And I know you, like me, have your Twitter feed filled with this information that people seem to genuinely believe. Can we put this word cloud back up again? This is something you'd be very familiar with, obviously, from your work in polling. The idea that Trump has been able to distill down what the Russiagate scandal is, which is a pretty simple scandal. Russians infiltrate the campaign. Trump tries to cover it up by firing Jim Comey and other things. It's pretty simple, but the complexity of the details has made witch hunt an easier thing to remember. Is there a way that that can be countered?
I believe so, but we have to acknowledge that Trump is right now winning the branding war. But part of it is because I think, Joy, the media, the mainstream media, has a responsibility to do what this show is doing, start ignoring his lies. They're not falsehoods, they're lies. They're conscientious, deliberate lies, and start focusing on the facts. I have to go back to what to me is the most incredible revelation of the week, which is former National Director of Intelligence, James Clapper. And let's understand who James Clapper is. James Clapper is the most respected, experienced, decorated intelligence officer of the last 50 years. He is the Robert Mueller of intelligence officers. And he has revealed this week what many of us who have our eyes open have suspected. He has gone on record and said he believes that Putin personally directed this operation, this attack against the United States, which put Donald Trump in office. What is he saying, and how does this go to the Trump branding? What James Clapper is saying is that Donald Trump is illegitimate. He is an illegitimate president of the United States. And I think this is what the mantra needs to be said to the American people. You have the person who looked at the evidence, looked at the facts during and after the election, and is saying in no uncertain terms he does not trust this president. He feels the evidence is for collusion. He feels that the evidence hints at treason. So when we say, Joy, this is not normal, we got to go beyond that. This is sabotage. The president of the United States is illegitimate, and that is what the media, I think, needs to start pointing to, those facts. 5 guilty pleas, 19 indictments, 75 criminal charges.
Yeah, and Kate, and I think what really disturbs, those of us who've been following this since the campaign, is that the goal on the Trump side obviously is to exonerate himself, to get away with it, right? And to extricate himself in case anyone else is indicted or there are additional indictments that he doesn't go down with the ship. But also to convince the voters that you work with every day in the campaigns that you work on, that even if it's true, it doesn't matter, right? That even if a foreign government helped Donald Trump become president, so what, right? That to get American citizens to not mind that that's the way a president comes into office, or to think that there's so much other random, corruption, that it's all of a piece. And the persons who are helping him do that include people who've also sworn to uphold the Constitution. The Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, is helping Devin Nunes, a California congressman who was part of the Trump campaign, the transition. He was on the transition. He's obviously trying to destroy the Mueller investigation, even by revealing classified information. The Speaker of the House is backing him up and helping him do that, rather than upholding the Constitution. He's on Nunes' side. Here is Paul Ryan on Thursday being asked if he even believes this absurd conspiracy theory that Donald Trump was being spied on. Take a listen.
You obviously believe that there was spies. I don't know the answer to that question.
He does know the answer to that question, Caton. And I am concerned that your party is, Steve Schmidt has put it in much tougher terms, the former McCain campaign manager, is literally saying we don't care about the national interest. We only care about protecting Trump. Caton?
Yeah, well, I think you're using the word cover-up, maybe is what you're accusing us of. The president's been brilliant at obviously changing the conversation on numerous fronts. I picked up the word spy this morning in a group I was in, so he's able, and Fernand's right, he's able to win the argument because of the coverage that he gets continually on changing the conversation. I mean, the thing that I'm sure that we are the most concerned about is the obstruction of justice. That's what you're looking at. That's what the fear is with Mueller, and the president's doing a pretty good job of stating his case. He's defending himself, and he has a pulpit to be able to do that with. Let's talk about elections, Joy, and where this matters. We're in the middle of the midterms right now. The president's numbers are ticking up. They are, obviously. Do Republicans, are they concerned, or do they about Russia's meddling? I mean, we do know, looking at internal polls, that people believe that Russia's been meddling or trying to meddle in our elections for years and years and years, and that both sides have spies, not only the Russians, so do the Americans in Russia. So is this affecting the electoral outcome? Not yet, but I'm a lot more positive about the midterms now than I ever have been, as being able to keep Congress out of Nancy Pelosi's hands and in a Republican's hands, and the Senate is looking better. So the president right now, my only fault is we're still not talking about the advantages of the tax plans and the policies, but one thing he's been really good at is, while we're all talking about Russia, the president has been dismantling the Obama agenda, and that's what has Republicans pretty excited.
I love you, Kate, but that answer disturbs me. It sounds to me like the answer is no, they do not care. I want to bring Maria Teresa in, because this is Rudy Giuliani, who's been Donald Trump's TV lawyer now, asking if he thinks there's any problem with the federal government, who's sworn to protect the United States, trying to stop Russia from messing with our elections. Take a listen.
What's wrong with the government trying to figure out what Russia was up to?
Nothing wrong with the government doing that. Everything wrong with the government spying on a candidate of the opposition party. That's a Watergate, a Spygate. I mean, and without any warning to him. And now, to compound that, to make it into a criminal investigation, Bill, that's why this is a rigged investigation.
Maria Teresa, he used the buzzwords. He used the hashtag. None of it was true.
All of it. And let's just set the table. The fact that we have Steve Schmidt, Nicole Wallace, Bill Kristol, Jennifer Rubin, all individuals that are very much Republican branded, that are basically sounding the alarm loud and clear, saying what is happening in the White House, what is happening currently in the Republican Party is not normal, should be testament to American people that we definitely need to take a seat back. If you ask me why you have the Republican leadership that does not care, is that they like power more than country. They like their power, and they like the fact that they are pillaging at scale and doing great harm to the American people at scale. So while we are looking over here, they are literally basically pillaging the coffers for future generations. It is unacceptable that we do not actually have a frank conversation. Yes, there's a spy ring going around, and yes, it is the jobs of countries to basically be in those rings trying to figure out how do you delegitimize one country or another, but it doesn't mean that it's acceptable. And the fact that Russia has been meddling in our elections, the big issue with Russians is that they want to make sure that we are destabilized and that we do not believe in the power of our vote. And that is not okay. And we have to make sure that we are very clear-eyed that when it comes to the integrity of our elections, every American, every concerned citizen should care.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Republicans may enjoy the fact that Russia is giving them entree to, massive tax cuts for now. But how do they know that they didn't get the RNC's info too? They know what they have.
Government spies were in his campaign. Here's what he tweeted. With spies or informants, as the Democrats like to call them, because it sounds less sinister, but it's not, all over my campaign, even from an early date. Why didn't the crooked highest levels of the FBI or quote-unquote justice contact me to tell me of the phony Russia problem? This, as his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, says the president's legal team wants its own briefing on the classified information presented to lawmakers. Let's get straight to the president's lawyer, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Let's start right there. The FBI confidential source is directly connected to this ongoing investigation into the president's campaign. Doesn't it create an appearance that the White House is interfering with this investigation?
I don't see that, Dana. I think that the White House has every right to know, the president has every right to know as commander-in-chief. After all, the investigation, as the Democrats said, revealed nothing new. So there's nothing, to us, that means exculpatory. Because the new would be if something turned up that was a surprise. So it should be very easy to brief us. And we can come out of it saying, same thing, nothing new. Or we might come out and be able to say nothing. In which case you'll have a real signal. You say that the president has a right to know as commander-in-chief. This is a very complex situation. He's not just commander-in-chief. He is, he was the head of and the candidate for a campaign of which this investigation is taking place. That's another reason he should know. I mean,
how is that legit for him to know about an investigation of him and his campaign? Explain that. Because
it's over, and it revealed nothing new. So then he has a right to know about it, both as a candidate, I mean, as the candidate back then, now as the president. He has a right to know about it in order to figure out what does it mean to this investigation. All that it means is an investigation that we thought was rigged from the very beginning. It never should have started.
But if you're saying
there was no evidence of collusion.
If you're saying it's over, back to the confidential source, then are you saying here this morning that you feel comfortable that there was no spy, as you and the president call this person?
Well, I don't, because I see contradictions. I see Clapper saying that there was a spy, but he was spying on the Russian end. But spying on the Russian end, if they thought there was collusion, meant spying on the president's campaign. Well, I'd like to know who he is,
to be clear,
and what he found out.
James Clapper said that he didn't know anything about it, and he was using the word spy, because it's what the president said, and he actually, as part of that, said that he doesn't like that term. But I guess here's my big picture question. You are somebody who made your name as U.S. Attorney in New York. You had a reputation for prosecuting crime as mayor, upholding the rule of law. If somebody connected to one of your investigations asked you for information about a confidential source, you wouldn't stand for it.
Of course, I wouldn't give him the name. If I thought that that information would help induce a guilty plea or cooperation, I would lay out for the lawyers or let them see the evidence. Very, very often prosecutors lay out the evidence pre-indictment in order to end the case. They say, look at this, listen to the tape recording, listen to the information. Hey, every once in a while they'll give up a confidential source if the person's being protected. So the name here has already been put out there. You and I don't know if it's true. But if it is true and it's dangerous to this man, he better be protected already. I don't believe he's being protected. It says to me that maybe the FBI and the Justice Department is being a little hypocritical here.
Why is that?
Well, they said he can't be revealed because it's dangerous. Now he's been revealed, Wall Street Journal, several other newspapers. If that man is the man, he better be protected. I'm not sure, but I hear he's not. So what's going on?
Mr. Mayor, I want to just ask point blank. Will the president sit down with Robert Mueller, even if the White House legal team or you, anybody on his legal team, doesn't get a briefing about this confidential source?
Well, if he wasn't thinking about it and it wasn't an active possibility, we'd be finished with that by now and we've moved on to getting the investigation over with another way. But he is adamant in wanting to do it.
He, the president.
We have the president, but we're more convinced as we see it that this is a rigged investigation. Now we have this whole new Spygate thing thrown on top of it,
but why,
on top of already very legitimate questions.
How is there evidence that it's rigged? I just want to go through, because I know you use this term a lot, and obviously so does the president. This investigation has already brought charges against 22 people and entities, including 13 Russians who have been indicted for trying to change the outcome of the election. So how is it a rigged investigation when they're not even close to being done and they already have this in their pocket?
Well, because first of all, there are two different investigations, right? The counterintelligence investigation is now over for over a year, and they weren't disclosing it to anybody. Immediately, that raises questions in my mind. Why not? I think why not? Because it clears the president. Then you get the Comey thing, which is a leak of a confidential memo, which is illegal for an FBI official to do, and that becomes the basis for appointing Mueller. I'm not saying Mueller is illegitimate. I'm saying the basis on which he was appointed is illegitimate. Now let's look at the indictment.
I just want to stop. So you think that the Mueller probe is legitimate?
Not anymore. I don't. I did when I came in, but now I see Spygate. I see.
But what you call Spygate, you admit happened before Robert Mueller was brought on to the scene.
But it has to inform the decision to appoint Mueller. Either it's evidence or not. And if it's not, it goes along with what they found already, which is no collusion with the Russians.
It might have informed it, but it wasn't the beginning. I just want to point one other thing out, because I know that you and the president have talked about that as well, that even the Republicans in the House, when they did their report, they said that the main reason that this probe was launched was because of George Papadopoulos, who was on the President's Foreign Policy Council, and an encounter he had with somebody in Australia, not because of this confidential informant. This is from the Republicans in the House.
I think actually the explanation for Mueller is mainly Comey. Comey said he wanted an independent counsel. Comey said he was going to orchestrate one. Comey wrote a memo and leaked it illegally through a professor. Hence we have Mueller. Illegal. No basis. Now, whatever the Spygate thing is, we're just learning about that now. I wouldn't come to any definitive conclusions on that. And Papadopoulos was part of that whole Spygate thing as well. So it kind of gets all intertwined. But the two indictments that you point out are really pretty questionable. Manafort, before Judge Ellis, maybe no authority for that indictment. That'd be extraordinary. That would ruin the whole investigation. Second, the Russians. That's a pretty phony indictment. They're not showing up for anything. You think they're coming here to be tried? That's like a paper indictment on which the press can fawn all over it, and it'll go nowhere.
How are you so sure that there was no collusion with anybody in the campaign? We don't know exactly what Robert Mueller and his team has right now. Do you know something we don't?
Well, yeah, I know 50 years of investigatory experience. tells me they don't have Don thing because they would have used it already, and they wouldn't be off on collusion, they wouldn't be off on Manafort, they wouldn't be off on Cohen. You got a good case, man, you go right to it. Against the President of the United States, you got something and you don't start charging it? Come on.
Well, maybe not necessarily against the president himself, but people in his orbit. You're confident that there was no collusion?
I can't be confident about my client. I mean, am I confident because I was in that campaign at a very intimate level? Nobody talked about Russians. Nobody knew about Russians. This came as a surprise to me, to the president, and to the top 4 or 5 people around him. Now, you go out to the outer orbit. How do I know what's going on? But I don't think that would matter. You can't, there's this collusion with a guy 50 rungs down on the campaign. Not that I'm saying it happened, but if it did, I don't know what that means.
Mr. Mayor, I want you to take a look at... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, I got the point.
I want you to take a look at this CNN survey. When asked whether President Trump should testify in the Mueller investigation, only 39% of Republicans say yes. That's down 15 points in less than 6 weeks. Now, this is not an accident. Is it fair to say that you and the president have a very specific, very political strategy to undermine this investigation, and it appears to be working?
No, it's not a strategy to undermine it. They're doing it. How did I know about Spygate? How did I know about?
But they're not talking about
sir. Yeah, but it's falling apart. I mean, so we have a briefing. We got a briefing. We've got Congress involved. We didn't do that. They're doing it. I didn't know that the Cohen thing. Cohen's now 2 months old, 3 months old. I came into it after Cohen. I didn't know the Cohen thing would result in nothing involving the president, or so far has. And all these things keep falling apart. I didn't know that Judge Ellis. Let me just finish that point. I didn't know that Judge Ellis was going to question the legitimacy of the indictment by the Mueller team.
The president, the president's allies on Capitol Hill.
They're all largely very, very committed Democrats.
Okay, the president's allies on Capitol Hill, and then it was picked up by the president in his tweets and by you as well, have been seizing on this confidential source. You call it Spygate, and without giving evidence that you really think it's there. That has no question helped erode public confidence in the investigation, which, you're a lawyer, but you're also an experienced Paul. You know what you're doing. Is that fair to say?
I hope I know what I'm doing. I have a birthday tomorrow, so I think I know what I'm doing.
No, but I mean that this is an intentional strategy to undermine the investigation, knowing that the investigators, the special counsel, it's their policy not to talk, but you are very free to and are very aggressive about doing so.
Well, I mean, they're giving us the material. I couldn't do it if they didn't have the material. They're giving us the material to do it. Of course we have to do it in defending the president. We're defending, to a large extent, remember, Dana, we're defending here, it is for public opinion, because eventually the decision here is going to be impeach, not impeach. Members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, are going to be informed a lot by their constituents. So our jury is as it should be, is the American people. And the American people, yes, are Republicans, largely, independents, pretty substantially, and even some Democrats now question the legitimacy of it. The Democrats, I suggest from their own self-interest, this is not a good issue to go into the congressional election.
That is something that you and the Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi, actually agree on. We're going to leave that for a second. We're going to have to take a quick break. We have a lot more to discuss, including a potential interview with the special counsel, Robert Mueller. Will the president do that interview? Stay right with us, Mr. Mayor. We're going to ask you that after the break.
All right.
State of the Union.
About a potential interview with the special counsel. You told my colleague Chris Cuomo that Robert Mueller has agreed to limit that interview from 5 topics to 2 topics. What are those 2 topics? What's in, what's out?
Well, the 2 topics that we more or less agree on, and I should say it's all contingent on every point being, worked out. It's kind of like the North Korean negotiations, not as important. And if everything could be worked out, then they would probably limit it to collusion and obstruction. The collusion part, we're pretty comfortable with because there has been none. The obstruction part, I'm not as comfortable with. I'm not. The president's fine with it. He's innocent. I'm not comfortable because it's a matter of interpretation, not just hard and fast, true, not true. So if you interpret his comment about firing Mueller, Comey, no discussion of firing Mueller, by the way. If you interpret that as obstructing the investigation as opposed to removing a guy who was doing a bad job on the recommendation in part of Rosenstein, but you see it as obstructing the investigation, then you can say it's obstruction. And then you can say it's perjury, which is even easier for them, which is where I think if they're sneaky, they're going. I don't believe Bob is. But remember, those guys were President Hillary Clinton's victory dinner. They were present in some of the prior investigations.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Mayor, you know, Robert Mueller is a Republican. That's a little bit of a red herring when you. I understand why you're doing it, why you're talking about people who work there who are Democrats. Who
worked for Obama, and who hired Democrats and very, very partisan Democrats. I never would have done that. I'd have hired all my assistant U.S. attorneys. Were basically
but Robert Mueller is the special counsel, and he's in charge of this. Would you? So, are you saying that?
Which is why we say it had. Which is why we have pause, because if I were looking at 13 down the middle people, men and women, I'd say fine.
Okay, let's get back to the interview.
Party.
Let's get back to the interview because that's the key question here. You mentioned the second topic, questions about obstruction. Are you, as the president's lawyer, willing to allow him to sit down and answer questions about that? About firing James Comey?
Well, sure, I'd be willing. All of that depends on how comfortable we are with their having an open mind and not having interpreted it wrongly already. If we have an open mind, we would recommend it to the president. Since the president is inclined to do it, I would assume he would. And we're a little bit away from that. I thought we were closer last week when we talked because of the summit. Summit's going to, I think, happen now and on our terms. I can't believe that Kim Jong-un is talking about denuclearization.
So you mentioned North Korea. You said earlier this week that President Trump was more likely to sit down with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un than special counsel Robert Mueller. So does the president see Robert Mueller as a bigger threat than Kim Jong-un?
No. In the case of Kim Jong-un, he's got all of his advisors recommending it, except, hey, they pulled out originally, right? No, when he was talking about meeting us on the, how about that, meeting us on the nuclear battlefield. And people expect me to intrude.
It's that simple. If you smuggle illegal aliens across our border, then we will prosecute you. If you are smuggling a child, then we